All right. Got it. Okay. Well, thanks, Andrew. I appreciate that. Welcome, everybody, to the 9th Quarterly Forum for MEP 2040. We're really excited to have you here. I think Andrew was telling us that we had a record number of registrants for this particular forum. So we're really happy to have you here, and we have a really good lineup today. For the agenda today, we're going to be going over some of our annual plan for these forums and giving you a little preview of what's to come for the year. And then we have Panu Pasanen, sorry, Panu. Panu. We have Panu here from Click presenting on Click LCA. We have Kent Peterson to talk about ASHRAE decarbonization, and we have Wes Sullens talking about LEED version 5 from USGBC. We're going to, after all three panelists have presented, we're going to take a moment and let the panelists answer some questions from the audience. So feel free to type in some questions in the chat or raise your hand and ask it live and in person, when we get to that point. We will then give our working group updates from within MEP 2040, and then we're going to wrap it up with a general Q&A for the audience, more related to anything that you want to ask, not specific to the panelists today. Just as a note, housekeeping, everybody, if you could keep yourself on mute while the presenters are presenting, that would be great. And then this is an hour and a half this time around, so we'll be ending at 12:30. This is our steering committee for MEP 2040. A lot of us have been doing this for a while. Josh is smiling. I think Josh gets just great joy in seeing our faces on screen sometimes.
Kim's hat always gets me, Chris.
Every time, Kim, the wizard in the group. But this is the steering committee. If you ever have any questions that you don't get out in a quarterly forum, we're always here via email to answer any of your questions or take in particularly any working group committee members. We can always use those. So feel free to chat us, LinkedIn us, email, however you like to communicate with any questions. I think I said welcome, but if I didn't, welcome to the quarterly forum. Our mission, we always like to reiterate this, is we're a movement to radically reduce total carbon emissions associated with building systems through collective action. And I think just the sample size of people that we have here today embodies the idea of collective action. So I love seeing everybody's faces here today. Josh, you want to present the forum topics, or was that Josh? Yeah.
Sure. Thanks, Chrissy. So again, welcome everyone. So glad to have you here. One of the tenets of MEP 2040 that we ask when you sign on is you participate in the forums, because we think it's really important. And when we say participate, we pull in signatories for presentations a lot. So if you're one of the signatories to MEP 2040, you're going to be asked to be involved. And part of that is, as you're seeing today, we're having different people present different things that are going on that we're hoping for. So today, manufacturers and EPDs will have a focus in different ways and what's happening in the marketplace. Obviously, Panu will present a cool new tool that we have today, as Christy went over. Wes will talk about LEED v5 and how that's going to hopefully impact all of us, and MEP specifically. And Kent will talk about the relationship that we're working with ASHRAE on, and what ASHRAE is doing moving forward to decarbonize on the embodied side. They've done really good in operational years. Q2, June, we will have an in-person at the ASHRAE summer meeting, owners and manufacturers, and really neat presentation where we're going to take two of the largest owners in the world of space, data centers, tech firms, thanks to Christy. We're going to have them talk about what they are doing to hopefully get more embodied information and why they're doing that. And then we're going to have three manufacturers, some that are more advanced than others, some that are dipping their toes in, to actually talk about what they're doing to meet these new requirements in the marketplace around their MEP products. We know right now, obviously, the embodied carbon information is not as prevalent as a lot of the building construction information. So this second quarter forum, we're really excited to have at the ASHRAE summer meeting. So if you're going to be there, please come join us. We're going to do everything we can to try and get it recorded and also have that up and available. Quarter three, we're going to talk about company plans. Obviously, MEP 2040, another tenet we have is, what is your company doing to decarbonize over time? We hope to get some of our signatories and people who have done plans to talk about what they've been doing. And then, as you see, quarterly is a loose term with us. But as we develop our relationship with ASHRAE moving forward, we want to try and have these in person at the ASHRAE conferences and take advantage of them. So we will be doing our year in review next year. So if anything really cool happens on December 31st, we'll be able to capture it. So next year we'll do a year in review. Kaylee and Rob and Andrew did a really good job at this year's ASHRAE meeting to kind of redo our last year's year in review that we did online. So I'm sure we'll do another one this year. Christy, I think I hit everything, but
Yep.
is that anything if there's anything else?
That sounds great. Yeah. This in-person ASHRAE quarterly forum is new for us. We've only done one at this point and it went really, really well. And it's a really great opportunity for us to get together at a conference that a lot of our signatories are already attending. So make sure you carve out time for that meeting or quarterly forum. And with that, I'm going to pass this on to Panu.
Excellent. Thanks a lot. I will just put it on screen. Right. So as you all heard, my name is Panu Pasanen, and I'm the CEO and founder of Click LCA. I'm really happy to be here. MEP has been for a long time something which was not very well advanced in terms of decarbonizing that bit of the built environment, and I'm really happy we get this far, and that we have so many people attending today to work tackling this matter. So a few things from our side. So our mission a bit different than MEP 2040s, but our mission is to power the makers of a zero carbon future. You guys are the makers, right? I mean, we don't manufacture, we don't design, we don't build. So what we can do is to help you along the way, right? That's it. And we do that with three different things. So first, software. So to make things faster, easier, smoother, requiring less competence in general, so that more people can do it. Because if it's domain of experts only, then there's no hope of scaling this thing to level where it needs to be. First thing, that's what we started with, and that's obviously our biggest part of our activity. Second part is scaling the number of people who can do this kind of work. And about 2 years ago, we resolved to start offering LCA training for free for anybody in the world. That's called Click LCA Academy. I think in America, you speak American, so not much of a thing, right? But we cover about 7 languages or something like that. But we do different disciplines, so infrastructure, architecture, and going to talk shortly about our MEP course as well that we are putting out. And the last thing is the data, so that you have a software, nice, that you have accurate data, even nicer. And we do there 2 things with data. So we are creating the EPDs from the world. We also pull them from many, what you call sequestered resources or databases, which you have to license to get or similar things. We also produce quite a lot of generic data, and incidentally, we started a lot of our generic data production with MEP because we have a lot of customers in data centers and hospitals and such like, and the amount of equipment that goes into these projects is phenomenal, just in terms of number of SKUs. And when somebody asks you, how do you model a hospital gas system? Like, the answer is right. How do you model that, and how do you make it feasible for a person who wants to do sustainable construction to actually deal with that problem? So we started tackling this from a systems level. So we provide generic data for systems, like a bit higher level systems, and then it's up to the industry, if you're a manufacturer, up to you to come up with data for product level. So that's how we tackle the data problem in MEP specifically. And I mean, yeah, I started by saying MEP has not been long in the game, let's say, but very important part of the whole. And we as a company, we work historically on the buildings, also on manufacturing, and then everything that is a bit of a gray area, so infrastructure, including data centers and such like. And we also work with quite many MEP manufacturers. So on very pragmatically, how we then help MEP 2040 members with the new partnership. So again, 3 things, right? I mean, easy to remember. Tool. So we have created a tool which is called MEP Carbon Tool. I don't think we get points for originality on the name, but it's pretty clear. So it includes all the MEP EPDs in the world, also some which are in specific databases. We also include CIPSI's TM65s, if those are of interest for you, and also our generic data. And if you're MEP 2040 member, or the other category is the supporting organization, I don't remember what it is now exactly, you can get it for free. You can just request for it, and the last deadline is to ask for it, so that because it ends at the end of this year. So, but you can get it for free, and knock yourself out. I mean, it's out there for making it possible for you to scale your activity in decarbonizing construction. It covers the materials, it covers the refrigerants, it covers the energy consumption and such like. So it's very specifically tailored for just for MEP scopes. So that's it for the tool. The second part is education. So I mean, we are not going to teach you anything about, well, MEP itself, but MEP LCA, right? So we are going to release a class sometime end of next month. We are creating it with ARUP, the British ARUP, I guess. I don't know exactly if ARUP in the US is member of MEP 2040. Maybe they should think about that, but we are releasing that class so that we can have very specific information on what's relevant for your discipline, right? In an easy to understand format. And that's going to be free for, obviously, for all MEP 2040 members and everybody else who's interested in this topic. And we are hoping that this brings more people to the community and to the workforce who work on decarbonizing MEP systems. And the third thing is more supplier EPDs. And then, of course, it's a game of suppliers wanting to have EPDs and you asking them to get EPDs. And that's a pretty big chunk of our work. So there we work with a lot of suppliers. And the only category specific tool we did so far is Luminaire EPD generator. So very narrow focus tool, but we are working on many more. So if you have a MEP manufacturer who needs EPDs, I mean, there is not going to be a free tool. On the other hand, we are happy to help them out with EPD generator and such like. So 3 things, yeah. And so if you want to make use of this, reach out for to get the tool, the education. You can find it in Click LCA Academy as soon as it's live. And if you have a supplier who needs EPDs, just reach out and we'll help them from there. I'll be sharing the link to the MEP Carbon Tool webpage shortly after when my presentation is over. And on the EPDs, in particular, what maybe is of interest in here is that because Click LCA is a fully integrated platform, so we have both AEC community and the manufacturing community working on the platform. So every time a manufacturer generates any new data sets, they don't even have to be published EPDs. They could be even just made for you, a project EPD or on-demand EPD, as it's sometimes called in the US. You're going to be having access to that. And that helps you to actually get the data at more affordable rates, because there's no need to pay for EPD verification and publishing just because you need a certain thing, assuming you trust your counterpart, obviously. All right, I will probably skip this part. So, but point of what we're trying to do is, of course, make EPDs cheaper, right? Because as long as they are not affordable enough, they are not going to be scaling to the number of SKUs on the market. And automating this is the bread and butter for us on the manufacturing side. That's it without what we do in this connection. Other than that, we are LCA and EPD software manufacturer. We are based out of Finland, where I'm also myself, but we are on the US market since about 10 years now, with the local subsidiary and local team over there. And looking forward to working with you all. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Like I said earlier, we're going to hold questions for the panelists till after the last panelist has gone. Our next presenter is Kent Peterson with ASHRAE, discussing ASHRAE decarbonization.
I'll unmute myself. It's great to see everyone. And for those of you who don't know who I am, I'm Kent Peterson. I'm a chief engineer for a 300-person consulting engineering firm, MEP, on the West Coast, with offices from San Diego all the way up to Seattle, and been heavily involved in the sustainability movement most of my career. Was the ASHRAE society president back in 2007, 2008. Currently have been chairing the ASHRAE Task Force for Building Decarbonization for the last 2 years. And I would like to provide you an update on what's happening with ASHRAE and how ASHRAE and MEP 2040 are beginning to work together. By the way, that opening photograph, for those of us coming out of the winter, was a summer picture that was taken just outside Dublin on a visit to the ASHRAE chapter there. So ASHRAE is changing from the task force to the Center of Excellence for Building Decarbonization. And I'm going to help try and explain to you what's happening within the organization, on why we're doing this, and how we're going to be moving forward. The task force previously was really ad hoc. And for those of you who don't know what that means, it means within the ASHRAE organization, it was the idea of an ASHRAE president 3 years ago to appoint a task force to put together what ASHRAE needed to do to address building decarbonization across the entire ASHRAE spectrum. And if you're not familiar with just ASHRAE in general in terms of scope, we have members in 160 countries around the world, with chapters in roughly 130 countries. So we have a broad reach outside North America, but the vast majority of our members are in North America, between United States and Canada. So a lot of our standards start out really focusing in the North American area, and then we work to take those standards and tailor those standards to other types of locations. But being ad hoc meant that it was at the purview of our ASHRAE president every year to reappoint the task force. And that's been happening. So, I mean, obviously it's been happening for 3 years in a row. And after we put together our plans, we really felt that ASHRAE needed to have a permanent structure, that we're in the long game on this. This is a journey to get us to net zero emissions throughout the entire built environment, including existing buildings. And we were tasked with coming up with what is the best way to roll this into the organization. And ASHRAE, for those of you who are ASHRAE members, know that it has a lot of volunteers. Even when you go to the annual meeting or you go to the winter meeting, We get somewhere in the neighborhood of 3,000 to 4,000 people that attend just our conference. And those technical committee meetings, those standard project committee meetings where they're working on standards and guidelines. And also people just attending our seminars and the learning opportunities that are there. So we wanted to roll this into the organization, make it permanent structure, figure out how we can actually address the strategy component, which is changing, in my opinion, every quarter as we're starting to look at decarbonization, the scope, I mean, especially at everything MEP 2040 is working on embodying carbon, what we're doing, how we're actually getting more and more of the MEP components in, how that'll happen over the next 5 years, how the regulations are being impacted, what we do on the advocacy side. All of those are extremely important. And that's just in addition to us providing guidance and education courses for members who need to address these type of things as they start to see it come out. So that was the impetus on why we changed from the task force, which was an ad hoc, to the Center of Excellence for Building Decarbonization, which is a permanent structure within the organization. Now, this new committee, I'll call it, the Center of Excellence, actually has 10 members plus 4 liaisons. So it's a total of 14 people focused all on strategy. We have liaisons from Members Council, Technology Council, and Pub and Ed Council, which are 3 primary councils within the ASHRAE organization. So Technology Council is where a lot of the heavy lifting on the technology side happens. Our technical committees, our research, our standard committees, standards, guidelines, any of that type of stuff all happens under Tech Council. And our Publishing and Ed Council is extremely important in terms of getting out all of our education courses and documents, that the final publishing of those documents, even though the generation of a lot of that material happens under our Tech Council. And Members Council is our outreach to our grassroots organization, all the chapters that are out there around the world. So we felt it was important to pull a liaison in from each one of these groups and also make assignments to these councils to take on the projects and the execution of what we believe fits the strategic plan of decarbonization for the organization as we start to move forward. So we also have joining us on the Center of Excellence for Building Decarbonization is Kaylee from MEP 2040 Steering Committee, because we have a liaison from MEP 2040 that will be sitting on our strategy group, or the Center of Excellence for Building Decarbonization, that helps plan what our strategy is going to be. And we have we do an annual strategy planning meeting to update our strategic plan for building decarbonization every spring. We have an upcoming meeting coming up in the middle of May that's going to be in Chicago for 2 days in order to update that plan, put together what the primary projects are that we want to be moving forward on, and then assigning where those projects will be executed and what kind of budgets need to be put to those projects and what the timeline is to get those projects done. And some of that will involve things that are certainly involving LCA calculations, especially when it comes. Right now, I know one of the things high on the list that's probably of interest is a research project that is at least in Canada and the United States to get better data on refrigerant emissions from various systems and different refrigerant types. So the Center of Excellence for Building Decarbonization really is, as I say, going to be providing that strategic direction. We're trying to separate strategy from execution of these things. There's only so many volunteers, and it's a lot better sometimes to keep people thinking about strategy and not get bogged down with the actual execution of getting those things done. And we have a lot of ASHRAE volunteers that are interested in doing these things. So this is a good way for us to reach out and use those resources that are available in order to execute what we need to do as we start to move forward. We will be the ones developing, leading, and participating in the strategic initiatives. Also, we'll be doing the outreach to outside partner organizations, and those partner organizations for ASHRAE, certainly include U.S. Green Building Council, AIA, BOMA, IFMA, others in what I could say are more North America, but we also do a lot of work with the Global ABC, UNEP, World Green Building Council, others, to try and push initiatives and help move decarbonization forward in some of the developing countries that are around the world, where we have members that are interested in that. Focus primarily on thought leadership, as they say, collaboration with these other organizations that want to see where we have parallel paths that we can work together and help move things forward quicker if we're working together, and definitely public advocacy. Working together, ASHRAE does have an advocacy arm in Washington, D.C. We also have a grassroots advocacy that's in each one of our chapters, and we'll help coordinate what those messages are, anything related to building decarbonization and the components that are involved in building decarbonization. The supporting activities, as I said, are really going to be happening at our councils or under our councils, and that includes, decarbonization task groups that'll be dedicated to projects that we give them. They have the technical resources. They'll be doing the technical reviews at that level. They'll also be doing coordination with standards. If you're not familiar, ASHRAE does have a lot of standards. In fact, we have probably 7 standards that are dealing just in carbon in some way or another, whether it's refrigerant emissions, whether it's defining net zero emission buildings, our sustainability standard 189.1, our standard 240p that I'm going to be talking about a little bit today on where we're at on that. We have a lot of standards that we try and coordinate and make sure that we're not cross-pollinating with different information than different standards, and they're kind of easy for the users to understand how to use that. Also, the training development that'll be coming out. I wanted to quickly update you. We have 7 guides in development. 2 of them have been published already. That's our Grid Interactive Buildings for Decarbonization Guide and our Building Performance Standard Guide. The Building Performance Standard Guide is free for download on the ASHRAE website. We have a couple more right now that are queued to be out in the next month or so, and that's our Decarbonizing Hospital Buildings, which has been in the 100% final editing for the last 2 months, so that should be coming out first. And then I'm expecting that our guide that we're working with Department of Energy and NREL on, which is Decarbonizing Building Thermal Systems, which is really a heat pump application guide. And that first version of that guide is going to be available for free probably by the end of next month or early May. And that'll be online guide, not something you download as a PDF, but it's online tool that'll be constantly updated. So first version will be coming out. We're expecting a second version expanded on that guide to come out at the end of 2024. That'll have even more application information, but there's a lot of great case studies in that guide of all the different types of heat pump systems that are out there. We also are nearing our 90% completion on both the CIBC TM65 guide for North America, focused on North American values that are going to be in that guide. We're working with CIBC on that. And we also have that guide along with the whole life carbon guide for building systems will be coming out more probably later August timeframe of this year. And then our last guide is our Building Decarbonization Retrofit Guide, kind of a heavy subject to tackle. For those of you who have been working in the retrofit industry and doing decarbonization retrofits, because of building performance standards, there's a lot of need for this. If you're not aware, building performance standards are due to go into effect in a lot of jurisdictions around the United States on Earth Day. So that's next month, this year. And that's part of the National Building Performance Standard Coalition. And there's a lot of people looking, how do we do these type of things to hit some of these carbon targets that are being done on the building performance standards. And this has a good recommendation for different types of building systems, how to approach that, how to maybe even approach a partial decarbonization if you're trying to get an owner to do something and they need to get the payback or need to see the best value coming out of that for the overall reduction of carbon that's happening there. Very quickly on standard 240, I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but this is our new standard that we're working with the ICC on. Intent is that this standard will probably be dropped into the building code because we're working with ICC once it's done. But this is the quantification of life cycle greenhouse gas emissions. And I know Josh has been very active on this standard. He's one of the members. The purpose is to provide a methodology to quantify and document greenhouse gas emissions associated with buildings, building systems, and building equipment and their sites over the life cycle. Centered a lot around EN 15978. They define a system boundary and a spatial boundary in the standard. These boundaries are defined in the standard on what's included, what's excluded. These are the modules that are included from EN 15978 in the standard itself. The standard content is here on the screen, really going through these types of things. I can tell you that we're probably gonna, ASHRAE in general has another standard that's in development that's just starting out, and that'll be 242P, I believe. And that is gonna be a standard on quantifying operational greenhouse gas emissions. Right now, we have at least 3, this might be the 4th standard that tell you how to calculate from energy to calculate those operational greenhouse gas emissions. And it's not a good thing to have 4 different standards telling you how to do it, and if they're not all aligned. So we believe it's important for us to have one standard, and all the standards reference the one standard for doing that. But at this point in time, we don't have that standard, so this standard has its own chapter on doing those calculations. They are very similar, and the standards are just not 100% the same in all the standards. We did just go out for public review, and hopefully you had a chance to download that document during public review. If you're not aware, you can go to the ASHRAE website. You don't have to be an ASHRAE member. Anyone is available to go to our standards portion of our website, look up the public review. When you know it's out for public review, you can go in there and for free download the PDF version of the standard, and anyone can make comments on the standard itself. We did receive 785 comments during the public review period that just ended from 68 commenters on this. Was really the first official public review. Most of the comments really centered around harmonizing definitions, global warming potential values that are being used in the standard, and how to treat biogenics. Right now, the standard doesn't allow for negative declarations in biogenics. And so people are making those comments. And part of the ANSI process, if you're not familiar with it, is to reach consensus and go out for public reviews and try and resolve these comments. And resolve comments doesn't mean it means you address comments, and you can give a reason back to a commenter why the committee feels a certain way. But you have to go through this due diligence process of making sure you're allowing the industry to get the ANSI designation on a standard. And those are important. It's also important for all of you that are very knowledgeable in the subject matter. This is a standard that's going to be coming out and will probably go into the building code. And I highly encourage you, it's going to come out for more public reviews. And when it does come out for public review, take the time to read and comment on those things that you don't feel comfortable, that you really want to have the project committee address. It's part of the process that makes the standard better at the end. Last thing, I just wanted to update you on some of the ASHRAE decarbonization conferences. Many of you have attended the last one that was in Washington, D.C. As the Washington, D.C. conference, it sold out, I think, 6 weeks in advance. This one, I think, sold out almost 8 weeks in advance. This happens to be our International Building Decarbonization Conference. We run this conference every 2 years internationally. The last one we had was in Athens, Greece. 2 years ago. This upcoming one is in Madrid, Spain, just next month for the conference. We're really looking forward to it. It is sold out. I apologize that it is sold out, but we try and keep these conferences to be in the 300-person range when they're the international conferences, so that it gets good interaction of the people that are there. Our European conferences tend to be more paper-driven conferences, meaning not a lot of application. There are a lot of people from universities and things like that on that conference, but we do have the upcoming conference that's on decarbonizing existing tall buildings in New York City. And while the registration is not open yet, they just did open up for people to submit. If you're interested in being a presenter, you got case studies, you can go to the ASHRAE website. You can look at this conference and see what it is they're looking for. If you meet those requirements, they are focused on tall buildings. I think it's minimum 15 stories, which isn't tall for New York City, but if you have a case study that you want to present on, they're looking for those presenters to fill that out. This is co-sponsored by NYSERDA in New York State. I'm expecting this conference, while we were able to get this conference to be a larger attendance, I think by 100 people bigger than the Washington, D.C. conference, it still is not unlimited. So I expect this conference is probably going to sell out too, just to give you a heads up on that. And my last thing is, MEP 2040 and ASHRAE have been working very closely together lately to figure out how ASHRAE can better support MEP 2040, provide meeting spaces, provide staff support and things. We're working through this right now, but there's no question in my mind that the two organizations are better working together. We all have the same mission. There's a lot of horsepower behind ASHRAE in terms of the dollars that we can get, some of the research and the collaboration we can do out there. MEP 2040 has brilliant ideas on how to move the industry forward, and I think the two of us working together has a bright future for decarbonization in the built environment. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. And thanks for that, that plug at the end for our partnership. I think we're all really excited on our end too, to start down this path with ASHRAE. Next and final presenter is Wes Sullens, here to present on LEED version 5. So Wes, feel free to share your screen. Thank you.
Are you seeing it?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you for having me, everybody, and great updates from Panu and Kent. I agree. We are all better working together. So thank you for that. I just wanted to share a bit on LEED version 5, which actually comes out next week for public review. Lots of standards out for public review right now, feels like. But wanted to give a sneak peek to this group and talk a little bit about decarbonization and embodied carbon and things in the standard. So this is our fancy new graphic and logo about LEED version 5. This will be our newest rating system in almost a little over 10 years. LEED version 4 was launched back in 2013. And I think most of you are all aware of LEED, but we are a nonprofit organization that runs the rating system. And it's a 100-point scale that looks at greening buildings across multiple impact areas, things like energy, water, site, materials, indoor air quality, things like that. And of course, materials and resources. And so LEED version 5 will be the biggest update in over a decade. We're really looking for strategies that go to scale and look at global and organizational goals for everybody in green building. So just a quick bit on the timeline. We released LEED version 5 for O&M at Greenbuild at our conference last year in November or October. And it's been out for kind of beta testing and beta projects since then. But the release of the BD&C, the new construction rating systems, commercial interiors, et cetera, is the one that's going to be released, as well as an update to the O&M rating system. So we have learned some things from the beta, and we're putting those into the version 5 for O&M, operations and maintenance. And so just next week, we're going to open for public comment, and that will be open for 60 days, at which time we'll respond to those comments, have another round, maybe a couple rounds. We'll see how many comments we get. And then the goal is to go to ballot by Greenbuild of this year, and so that we can have the rating system ready early next year or in Q1 to launch as a rating system for all types of projects. So we're on a pretty quick timeline. It's been a long road to get here, but it's been fun. And the way we're organizing V5 are around these 3 main system goals. So ecological conservation and restoration is a big priority for the organization and for things green buildings can do. So is the quality of life, the health and impacts inside as well as outside the building that affect people and quality of life in buildings. And decarbonization, kind of the fundamental and foundational part of LEED version 5. And the way this will shake out is roughly we'll have about half of all of our points in the rating system will be about climate action and decarb. And then about a quarter of all the points will be about quality of life, and another quarter for ecosystems and restoration. And of course, lots of things have overlap and do double duty, but that's the idea, is to have some core strategies for all these things balanced throughout the rating system in this way. The rating systems, we're having a number of updates, one of which is we're going to have fewer adaptations than we've had in the past and really try to solidify core standards for LEED. And so for building design and construction, there'll be new construction, major renovation, which is our NC rating system, as well as core and shell. We'll have a interior design and construction for commercial interiors, and then the LEED for existing buildings, LEED O&M, or EBOM, sometimes it's called. Some highlights overall to V5 is we're trying to make greater continuity across the building life cycle. What that means is when you design and construct a building for LEED, and those new core and shell, commercial interiors, whatever it might be, those should dovetail right into your operations and maintenance. So the data, the tracking, the systems you put in place, all of those things will have much better connections to the O&M rating system. And then the O&M rating system will be based on performance and metrics that you measure in use, as well as some things like policies for management and such. But greater continuity is what we're striving for in V5 between those products. We are also looking at new requirements for platinum certifications. So if you're going for a LEED platinum new building or commercial interiors, whatnot, or a existing building, there will be operational and embodied carbon requirements for the platinum level. We're also adding this idea of assessments required for all projects, especially the new ones: resilience assessment, social equity assessment, and a carbon assessment. So kind of a total carbon-ish type of assessment that project teams do to see their projections for not only operational energy, but also refrigerants and embodied carbon over time. And we are looking to move towards a 5-year rating system. This is something that we've committed to as part of V5. So V5 will be released in 2025, and the idea is the next version will be in 2030. So I wanted to give it just a little bit of a deeper dive, because we aren't at public comment yet, and I don't have the documents to share with you all until next week, but give a little bit of how we are looking to address decarbonization in V5. So for O&M, as I mentioned, we are looking at some platinum requirements. These are new ideas that a platinum building needs to not only score 80+ points, but also get these specific requirements met for any building that achieves platinum. So looking for a highly energy efficient with low operational emissions, some renewables, as well as further operational emission reductions. So the way we do that is by looking at which credits and scores projects need to get, as you see on the right there. But that's a way to really encourage and reward the best-in-class platinum projects in version 5. On the BD&C, ID&C, core and shell, et cetera, we are looking for a highly energy efficient building. So you have to get 10 points under the enhanced energy efficiency credit. You have no GHGs from on-site emissions except emergency or backup power needs. And that means you have to earn about 5 points or more under the credit for electrification, which is a new standalone credit. 100% renewable energy, which is under the renewable energies credit in the rating system. So some reorganization of those EA credits that we've seen all these years, right, as kind of all these ideas and strategies put together. We've enhanced and clarified specific aspects like energy efficiency, electrification, and renewables. And then lastly, we also are putting in a requirement for embodied carbon reductions. So the project teams must earn at least 2 points under the reduce embodied carbon credit, which is a materials and resources credit. And yep, a couple of other updates for EA, the EA category. Like I mentioned, there'll be some new credits like electrification. There's also monitoring-based commissioning, energy performance credit, as has always been the case, and a GHG credit. So it's really looking to speak more specifically to these strategies and impacts that a specific project will have in different regions. So electrification, for example, in certain regions may be more accessible, but other places you can get deep energy efficiency and GHG reductions overall. So just a new way to look at that credit category. Under materials, we're going to have a new assessment for embodied carbon. This is where you will benchmark against some known quantities for embodied carbon. Then we'll have a standalone building and material reuse credit, and we'll have a credit that addresses structure and enclosure embodied carbon reductions. We'll also have a multi-attribute product that looks at building materials other than structural, so for finishes and others, that looks at multiple criteria, including embodied carbon, but also health, circularity, social equity, sourcing of raw materials, things like that. Just a quick plug, we released a report last year on embodied carbon in buildings with RMI, and there's a link there to find it. This really underscored a lot of the strategies that we're finding in LEED version 5 in the materials and resources category in particular for embodied carbon reduction. So a good resource to look at if you're interested in learning more about embodied carbon and some of the reasons why we focus the credits the way we have for V5. And just one more thing on embodied carbon. So I mentioned we'll have a prerequisite for embodied carbon assessment. The idea here is that a project team assesses their major structural enclosure and hardscape materials, things like asphalt, and you would assess those against some known benchmarks, but no reductions are required. It's just do the math, compile that data, the EPDs, whatever it might be, and then benchmark those numbers against some set numbers that we found as averages for those impacts. Then from there, the credit builds on it to reduce embodied carbon. So you'll actually get points for going beyond and reducing embodied carbon from those benchmarks. And you can do that in a prescriptive way or performance method way, doing the whole building LCA or other types of weighted average like an EC3 type approach. We also have added a construction phase pathway. So for construction teams that are tracking their emissions on site, or during the job site, so A4 and A5 phases, there's a credit available for that or an option. We also are including things like reuse, recycling, and circularity more in version 5 to really enhance those low carbon or no carbon materials and try to foster those industries for better reuse. So building and material reuse, really targeting finishes materials that are ready to be reused and recovered, things like carpet tiles and ceiling tiles and gypsum, things that have high embodied carbon but aren't being reused and repurposed enough today. And then the optimized building products, which has, like I said, non-structural materials and looks at multi-attribute optimization across a full product's life cycle. And that's what I've got prepared for today. I just want to thank first and foremost our volunteers and members who have helped us get us this far in LEED version 5. And we look very much forward to bringing this to public comment and getting all of your input in the next days and weeks. So it drops next week. Please check our website. We will have a place to review the documents, to make comments, and lots of events and stakeholder groups to hear more about it and have in-depth webinars and things like that. So we look forward to engaging this group on LEED version 5 and can't wait to hear all of your ideas on how to make it even better. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Thank you to all three of our panelists and presenters. We're going to take maybe 5 minutes here to let our presenters address some of the questions in the chat. I'll tee you up. I've been taking note of some of the questions that have come up in the chat. And then we'll move on to the working group updates. So first question, there's a question, I think this will go to Panu. Out of curiosity, how many MEP EPDs are there in the world? Do you have a rough number?
Yeah, I think the rough number is 2,400 published ones. So there are very many available to some big manufacturers who just cannot afford to publish them because of the registration and verification fees. So there's like not 10 times that amount of data, but which is basically sequestered. And big concern for me is obviously like how can that kind of data be made available, and we're trying to work on increasing the number. But yeah, the publishing cost is a barrier for manufacturers to create more.
All right, thank you. Okay, next question. Let's see. I think this is probably for Wes. Would the TM65 for MEP products be considered for the embodied carbon for platinum certification?
Great question. It's not in there currently, although there are some ways it could be included. So I'd love to say more about it, but without getting into too much detail, it's hard to share. But I think under the optimized products credit, it could show up as a route. But that would be an excellent thing for us to dig deeper into during public comment and see the appetite for that from our audiences.
Yeah, that's an excellent point, Wes, too. Like once this V5 is out for public comment, all these questions, should be presented in the public comments so that USGBC and GBCI could address them. All right, next question. This is actually my question, Kent, this is for you. It sounded like there might be a second opportunity for public comment on 240p from your presentation, though in the timeline, I don't think it showed a second public comment. Can you give a little clarity on that?
Absolutely. There will be a second public comment. Right now, the goal is, so goal on the standard is to try and get final publication by early 2025. Right now, the standard chair is saying that they're determined to try and get a second public review out by the end of August 2024. But there might even be a third public review, depending on how many comments we get back and whether they're resolved or unresolved. So I would envision something like this taking at least 3 public reviews before we could get to final publication. And, I have experience. I chaired ASHRAE Standard 189.1 with USGBC and IAS when we first developed that standard back in 2009, 2010. And I mean, it's amazing what a group of dedicated volunteers can do with a goal of getting a standard through. And even though you look at 780 comments or whatever, I mean, if everyone's aligned and you're trying to get these things resolved, and you have a lot of meetings, and I know their next face-to-face meeting is next month in Washington, D.C. as a project committee, they will hit these targets and they will get this out there. And when it is out for public review, I mean, we do send out a notice on ASHRAE, and it usually is carried in some of the trade magazines, but we can certainly send a notice out to the steering committee on MEP 2040 so they can share that list with everyone here. So you take the opportunity. I know I did see a comment also that someone said they went to go try and download it, and you can only download that draft while it's out for public review. As soon as the public review period ends, the draft goes away. They don't leave it out there on the internet for a long period.
Yeah, okay, that's helpful. And it sounds like, you know, Andrew and my fellow steering committee members for MEP 2040, like something MEP 2040 can help broadcast when 2240P is back out for the second round of public comment.
Josh is on the project committee, so he's pretty in the loop on everything that's happening.
Perfect. Excellent. Okay, I think we're gonna do one or two more questions. If you have any questions, feel free to raise your hand and ask it live and in person. But I do want Wes to address the question about Lead for Schools. I know you answered it in the chat, but I don't know if everyone is reading through the chat.
That's a good question. The question was, will Lead for Schools go away? The answer is, as a standalone kind of adaptation where it's a whole book unto itself, that is no longer going to be there. We're trying to consolidate rating systems down to fewer main rating systems and adaptations just to make everyone's life a little simpler. But where there are specific school requirements, like say ventilation rates or occupancy things or whatnot, those will exist within individual credits as a school strategy. So we'll see that for healthcare, schools, some of the other adaptations, maybe warehouses, et cetera, are in the specific credits themselves rather than as a standalone.
Sounds good. Thank you. Thanks for that clarification. And we'll go with the last question for Panu. There's a lot of interest in the chat on how do we request the free download for the MEP Carbon Tool, and then how do we know when the next training is coming?
Yeah, right. So Simon Slater, who's my colleague, he's just posted his email to the chat. So everybody can reach out to Simon, and there's going to be also summary how that can be shared then to all the MEP 2040 members on how to get that done. So we don't have the dates for the MEP class when it's going to be available, but we are targeting end of next month. So we'll send an update on that separately. But if you register at academy.oneclicklca.com, you can then access it whenever it becomes available. So yeah,
awesome.
those are the ways. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Simon, if you haven't already, could you post that link that Panu just mentioned too, so our group here can click and check out the offerings?
Absolutely, no problem. And there'll be a communication following this once we're aligned on dates and everything.
Wonderful. Thank you. Okay. I think that concludes our question and answer period for the panelists. We're going to move on to our working group roundup. So this is within MEP 2040. Within MEP 2040, we have a variety of working groups that focus on specific topics. It was becoming clear to us as we started this that there were just too many topics to tackle all together as a group, and we broke out into working groups to try and really target some of the more important topics. So the first working group up for an update is the Data Analysis and Reporting Working Group, or we call them DAR. Who is giving that update?
I think that's me.
All right, Corey, go for it.
Yeah, thanks, Christy. So This year, the DARS, we've sort of challenged ourselves to work on a few different things and continue working on some of the data gathering that we had already been doing. Our big project for the year is this deep dive study into the MEP LCAs and working with Click. And we've had several team members that are sort of on our subgroup for that study that have donated anonymous projects that can be used. And the idea there is to really use this as an example, create case studies that can then be published, and those really be good starting points, you know, kind of like a go-by for folks as you're trying to get in to do your own MEP LCAs and for your projects and incorporate those into another whole building LCA to kind of get that more holistic picture. You know, we've also worked as a group on providing comments to the ASHRAE 240P. So we look forward to, you know, working together to respond to those. And then we're continuing to, you know, ask manufacturers and owners and equipment repair groups about collecting refrigerant leakage data. And we have had some success in getting some relatively large data sets and looking to sort of parse that down to further validate the calculations that were being done and the impact of those. And so far we're seeing some strong correlation with what's in ASHRAE 228. And then just this week we started looking at talking about natural refrigerant equipments and sort of that next step from A2Ls to A3s and what that's going to take in the US marketplace. So looking forward to all this and seeing what we can come up with throughout the year.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that update. Next group is the manufacturers and EPDs group, which I'm on, and I don't see Adam McMillan on here, our fearless leader for this working group. So I'm going to go ahead and take this update on. So we had talked previously about, and I know there's been a pretty decent call from all of you, our signatories, for specification language that ask for embodied carbon data from manufacturers and within the submittals for projects. And we are still working through that right now. We're actually hoping, you know, there is this collective action effort going on with MEP 2040. And in an ideal world, we would get some examples of template language, spec language that y'all as the signatories have been putting out there into the world. If you are, we are but a small steering committee. So if we could harness that collective effort, feel free to, like I said, connect with any of us on the steering committee, or MEP 2040 site has a general email that you can always connect with us on as well. So that's still in progress. The manufacturers forum, like we mentioned when we were going through the 2024 forums, we're really targeting owners and manufacturers at the live Q2 ASHRAE Summer Conference Forum that we're going to be, where we're going to be live for the forum. Just a reminder, on the website, there are call to action letters that have already been created and are there for your resource, for your use, that address sustainable refrigerants for MEP systems, subcontractor takeoff data for that embodied carbon information, and MEP equipment product transparency. So, you know, one of the things that this group really is all about is pushing the industry into like the next step, potentially an uncomfortable step, but the next step of how we get these EPDs and how we get this information. So feel free to take any of those call to action letters and send them to various vendors for your products. And it's basically a heads up to them that you will be asking for this data very soon in your specs and you'll be requiring it, just kind of as a heads up. We've also been, as a working group, working with PNNL, and I'll move forward to the next slide, working on a program with them to get more EPDs on the market for MEP systems. And actually a good amount of our time right now as a working group has been spent working with PNNL on this. I believe it's a grant funded program. But this is all in an effort to, again, get more EPDs on the landscape, you know, available for use. And Adam's better at talking about this particular part than I am, but I believe we're targeting with this activity lighting fixtures, which if anybody didn't know, happened to be one of the big ticket items, especially in office fit outs, because of lease terms being pretty short and definitely shorter than the life cycle of a lighting fixture. So I felt like that was a good use of this grant time. And I think most people on the committee agreed with that. And here's the timeline for this project. So in end of summer and in the fall of 2024, we should be showing up with some pretty significant updates on the progress of this activity. And then communications.
Thank you, Christy. So I'm Rob Boland. I am the co-chair of the communications working group with Andrew Himes. I think our big sort of report for this is that we have now brought into play some administrative support from ASHRAE to help us with some of the administrative activities. So shout out to Candace from ASHRAE in terms of helping to lead what we are trying to some degree, help professionalize with regard to our ad hoc voluntary organization that we have here. Play a little bit on some of what you heard from Kent. You know, there has been a sort of ongoing, quite extensive amount of communication to make sure that alignment is there between what we are doing at MEP 2040. Kent mentioned, you know, the original Building Decarbonization Task Force being ad hoc. Well, we kind of mimic that, where we are very much voluntary, and we are parallel to ASHRAE, not under ASHRAE, but really completely aligned with not just in increasing the momentum of decarbonization in the built environment around MEP systems, but accelerating that. So that has been something that we've been kind of working toward in terms of getting some administrative support to help us with website and web publishing, social media outreach, organizing and facilitating quarterly forums like today, and then maintenance of signatories, supporter lists, resources available to signatories and supporters, etc. There's a lot of signatories and supporters on this forum today, but not everybody who's on the forum is a signatory. So again, outreach to those who are attending. If you're not a signatory and you provide MEP engineering design services, please join us. Sign up, go to the website, click on the link to become a signatory. If you're a supporter and you don't provide those services, you can still be a supporter. Please sign up, join the movement with respect to us. We've got a summary list on the slide here, only sort of identifying some upcoming decarb related conferences. This really is the short list of what is becoming an increasingly long list of decarbonization conferences. You've heard about some of these already, specifically the ASHRAE conferences. Madrid, not surprising, being sold out. That's coming up very quickly. Get to the decarbonization conference in New York City on tall buildings soon, because that's going to be sold out very soon. The ASHRAE annual conference, where it's been mentioned that we will have our next quarterly forum live and in person. So hopefully we can see many of you joining us in the room, but there will be a virtual component to that for those who are not able to attend ASHRAE. And then some of the other sort of very short-term upcoming, we'll continue to refresh this list for each of our forums so that we're trying to identify those conferences around decarbonization that are coming up in the near to mid-future. I guess the last thing I would say with regard to communication, and Christy touched on this, if you are a signatory and want to participate, please reach out to us. We've got these working groups. There's just a ton of activity that is going on. It really is not just, moving forward the technical content in the DARs and the EPDs, but, networking with like-minded professionals, right, in our particular space. This is very important for us to continue to work together. So please do reach out to us. I think the last thing that I would sort of comment on before we close, I want to do a special shout out to Christy for jumping in at the last minute to act as our moderator and MC for activities today. Christy, thank you
Thanks.
very much. You did a great job.
Thanks, Rob.
Yes, and she was trying to push me and to be in her role, and obviously
I did not win.
yeah, well, so much better than how I would have done this. So, Christy, thank you very much.
I appreciate that, Rob. Thank you. It's a privilege to be able to be here just in any way, so I appreciate it.
I want to add, Christy,
Yes, sir.
Just another note on communications. I want to echo a word that Rob just used, which I think is highly important, and the word is movement. MEP 2040 is a grassroots movement of building industry professionals focused on decarbonizing building systems. That's incredibly important to note. And as a movement, as a grassroots movement, it means that we're entirely volunteer driven, and that the energy that drives this movement, it comes from all of you, all of the folks on this call, and all the folks who are part of MEP design firms and supporting organizations who are in the mix as well. And there are a bunch of things that everybody can do to help build this movement, not just a small group of people on a working group. So your organization can issue public statements of support. You can publicize MEP 2040 to your employees or members via your newsletters and social media channels. You can attend these quarterly MEP 2040 forums. You can highlight the ongoing progress of the challenge on your channels. And then it's all about networking. Like Rob said, you can suggest to MEP firms in your network that they also become not only signatories, but participants in the working groups and in the movement. And I'll just kind of finish by putting the MEP 2040 LinkedIn channel in the chat window so that you all can see it, and make sure that you're following the channel and contributing to it as well. When you or your social media folks, social media public committee or team or individuals are posting anything related to your work and decarbonization, tag the MEP 2040 channel in your post as well. And so there's the link in the chat window. Actually, I just accidentally sent it only to Kim. I'm going to send it to everybody now. Sorry about that. I tend to think of Kim as like the universal person,
Well, it goes into the magician's.
Yeah, exactly.
And then gets, yes.
That's why we let him wear that magician's hat. So
it's part of the wizard duties. Yes,
that's right. Yeah,
exactly. All right, so that's it from me as well.
Awesome. Okay, well, thank you so much. I echo all of what my colleagues said, and I will say I have seen in recent conferences MEP 2040 getting mentioned a lot more in people's presentations that have very little to do with MEP 2040. So I feel like this movement has really gained some momentum and just start seeing it pop up in a lot of places. So thank you for that, because it is our signatories and our supporters that are taking the effort to do that one extra slide and tell everybody else about MEP 2040, and that's how we spread the word. So we appreciate that. We have space here for any questions generally about MEP 2040 or anything like that. I'm done talking, so I'm going to say, if you want to ask a question, we're going to be here until 12:30, because that's when we said this ended. And raise your hand or come up.